In this video lesson, we will be looking at factoring by grouping. You can see here we have a term or an expression with 4 terms. It seems like a lot, but we're going to break this down by grouping. So we're going to group these first 2 terms and the second 2 terms and factor it. So let's look at an example. Okay, so let's take a look at this first one. It does say factor completely. We have 3x cubed plus 5x squared minus 30x minus 50. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite it here so that we can see it. 3x cubed plus 5x squared minus 30x minus 50. Okay, then I'm going to group the first 2, and I'm going to group the second 2. All right, then what I'm looking at is I'm looking at these first 2 terms and I'm looking for the greatest common factor. Now, we've already worked on greatest common factor, so when I consider these, I notice, first of all, both of them have an x. So we can take out an x. The most we can take out is whatever the lowest exponent is, x squared. And when you think of 3 and 5, there's no common term. Like 3 goes into 3, but 3 doesn't go into 5. So they don't share anything else except for the x squared that I'm going to take out. And when I take that out, I leave in parentheses what remains. Okay, so what remains here is going to be a 3x plus 5. If you want to check that work, basically you can just distribute this x squared minus 3x, and you get 3x cubed. And x squared times 5 is 5x squared. Okay. Now, you look at the other 2 terms and factor out a common factor here too. Now, we have a negative 30x and a negative 50. The first thing to notice is they're both negative. If they're both negative, then we're going to actually factor out a negative, okay? But then we think about 30x and 50. They don't both share an x, so we can't take out that x. But they have a 30 and a 50. Well, what's common in 30 and 50 is 10. So if we take out 10, or negative 10, and then let's see what's left. Well, to get from negative 10 to 30x, we would have to multiply times 3x. And then to get from negative 10 to negative 50, we'd have to multiply times 5, so we put plus 5. And then what you should already notice here is that we have a 3x plus 5 and another 3x plus 5. So these are our common binomial. So what we're going to do is we're going to put these 2 terms that we factored out together in one set of our parentheses here. So we have x squared minus 10 times, and then we put this common binomial in one set of parentheses as 3x plus 5. And as long as these are all factored completely, then you have completed and you have your answer. It's been factored completely. What this means is if you were to FOIL this, first term, outside term, inside, and last, you would get this expression, okay? Now, let's take a look at one more that has an additional step at the end. And that's this one here. So we have x to the third, x cubed plus 4x squared minus 25x minus 100. And we're being asked to factor it completely. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me divide that up. So group that. Okay, so let's look at the first set here. We have x cubed plus 4x squared. Obviously, what they have in common is the x. The only thing they have in common is an x, and we can take out x squared because, again, x squared is the lowest of the exponents. So we'll factor that out, and then what remains is x plus 4. X plus 4. Now, again, this is another example where both of these are negative. If they're both negative, you can factor out the negative. If they're not both negative, then you just factor out the positive, okay? But they're both negative. So I'm going to factor out, I'm going to consider what do 25 and 100 have in common? Well, 25, because 25 goes into 25 once and it goes into 100 4 times. They're both negative, so I'm factoring out the negative 25. And then what remains is what I would multiply 25 or negative 25 times to get back to negative 25x and to negative 100. And that's going to be x plus 4. Negative 25 times x is negative 25x, and negative 25 times 4 is negative 100. Then again, you see your answer here, or you see your common, you see the common binomial of x plus 4, and you see the other two terms that we can put together. So it's going to be x squared minus 25 times x plus 4. Now, you may think that you've completed this. It does say factor completely. And what we have here in this first term, this x squared minus 100, well, this is called the difference of two squares. We've actually learned this lesson already, so let me give you a quick review. So a quick review is simply that if you have two terms that are squares, such as a squared and then minus b squared, so the difference of two squares, you can factor that as the square root of the first term plus the square root of the second term, and then the square root of the first term minus the square root of the second term. Okay, so a plus b, a minus b. So in this x squared minus 25, this is the difference of perfect squares, okay? The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5. And since it's the difference, we factor that as x plus 5 times x minus 5. Then we just bring down our x plus 4, and now we have factored it completely. All right, so that would be what you put here in that answer. All right, hopefully this little practice will help you with the assignment.